Hey, seventh grade, here we are coming from Mr. Emery's garage again from the studio in North Richland Hills. So, pretty exciting. I think this episode is sponsored by Mountain Dew and Licorice. So, I don't know. We need to get some sponsors so, make this a little more decorative. I don't know. So, that's my opinion. So, if you have opinions on what I should decorate it with, let me know. So, anyways, hope you guys are all doing well. Um, this week, this week's like I said, a little bit different. We had notes earlier in the week, and then this. So next week you'll just do notes on Wednesday, and then remember on Fridays what I'm going to do. And we'll start it this Friday, because then next week we'll kind of really get in that routine. This Friday you'll have a 15-20 minute video, and basically it's me going through the review as you guys kind of just follow along. Okay. So make sure you watch that. You don't really have an assignment for it, but it's to really just go over the same information, pinpoint some things maybe I didn't touch on, just so we're clear on some key ideas as well. So remember to do that on Friday, okay? And then remember your questions and your notes, send them to me. Um, Remember, many of these should be more than one word on there. And you guys I've glanced at some of them. You guys have done a pretty good job so far. So this chapter is a little bit shorter, so shouldn't take us real long to get through it. Um, but anyway, so here we are after the defeat at the Alamo, obviously most famous. Goliad, just as bad. Um, as far as people killed by the Mexican army. But remember, you also had your defeats at Agua Dulce, San Patricio, and Refugio. And so the Texans uh, are starting to realize, hey, we're not in a good position to fight right now. Santa Anna, of course, is really brimming with confidence and really wants to keep punishing the the Anglo settlers. So Santa Anna starts marching, towards where he thinks Houston's going to be, which is towards modern day the city of Houston, which of course was not called that at that time. So as Santa Anna's marching through these towns, the people in these towns weren't that big. The army wasn't there. There were just people living there. So they started retreating. They're trying to catch up to Santa Anna's, or I'm sorry, to Sam Houston's army. And they're trying to stay ahead of Santa Anna. They feel they can get to the army, they're going to be safe. Now, Santa Anna's coming to these towns. People are fleeing. And Santa Anna, basically, he's ordering his troops grab what we can use. So if there's livestock, food, medicine, guns, ammunition, any of that, grab that stuff. And whatever we don't use, we're going to go ahead and burn the houses down and burn the buildings in these towns. So that's the Texans started to retreat. So Sam Houston now, after Alamo, the words slowly starts to come in. What's happening, and you've actually had new. So remember, Travis wrote his letter and sent it out. So you start having people from the U.S. start to come to Texas. Now remember, these were not U.S. soldiers; these were people that felt they should go and help the army, the Texas Army, against the Mexican army. Okay, um, so Sam Houston now is given command of both the volunteers and the regular army, and it's going to be his way or the highway. And so he has this army still not trained. You have new people showing up, uh, that have never been in Texas or part of Sam Houston or part of an army at all. And so that's kind of his army at this point, which is really, if you match them up against the Mexican army right then and there, would not have been a good situation. The next part where it says a difficult decision, what that is really the decision. You got to remember at the time now, as the word gets out of what's happening to these Texas defenders being killed, executed, et cetera, et cetera. The people of Texas, their blood starts to boil. They want what? Revenge, of course. And they're high emotions, and they want to go after Santa Anna. They want to go and meet him and march west and meet him. So the decision is Sam Houston says, no, we've got to retreat. Okay. We've got to retreat. The reason is we don't have enough people. We don't have enough qualified people. We're not trained. And I want to get Santa Anna farther away from his supplies and farther away from Mexico. He also was trying to make Santa Anna split his army. Um, Houston knew he couldn't fight his whole army head on, that he would need to fight, a split army. So that's the decision he makes to move to the east, start retreating. A lot of people are not happy with it, of course, but he stood very firm on this, and you can see in the movie even Sam Houston, played by Dennis Quaid, basically keeps telling him, "No, we're marching, we're going," and people were not happy about it. All right. Um, the runaway scrape, that's basically what I just described, is the people of Texas retreating to the east, Sam Houston retreating to the east, and also as he's retreating. Remember, this is happening pretty quickly. This started with the Alamo siege. Started in February and then ended March 5th, and then so this is still here in March. And so as he's retreating through these towns, he's picking up more volunteers. So one, he's gaining more people. You got people coming from the U.S. to help, and as he's treating, as they're stopping for camp and this and that, because they're not just going the whole time. That's when he's training his army. Okay, I mean, he knows who has horses, who doesn't, who has guns, who needs what. So a lot of it, he's preparing the army to fight eventually as he's retreating. Okay, and that period is called, like I said, this is called the Runaway Scrape. When we're talking about Texas history, which was not popular with a lot of people at the time, right? At every stop, hey, when are we going to fight? When are we going to fight? Houston's like, let's break camp, move out. Okay. So of course, after this all happened, people were like, "Oh, Sam Houston is a genius." Well, there were a lot of people that were upset with him. Okay, a lot of people upset with him. The road to San Jacinto. Sorry, don't have the coronavirus, just a cough. Um, the road to San Jacinto. What we're looking at there is, where's my sheet? Hang on a second. Okay, found it. So on the road to San Jacinto is, so Houston's retreating, right? And there's people fleeing in front of him and trying to keep up. Houston was worried because he still hadn't heard from Fannin yet. He didn't know what had happened to Gonzalez, or I'm sorry, at Goliad. I remember, and he had about 350 troops ready to fight. He still hadn't heard from Fannin because remember he told Fannin to abandon it and meet up, and Fannin waited, and we know what happened with that. So, anyways, he continues to retreat. He's going past these settlements. Eventually, then he stops at a plantation near modern day Hempstead, and it's called Grouchy's Plantation, and he sets up camp there. He's got about 1,200 to 1,300 men with him, and he starts training them. Okay, he starts training them. This is about March 30th, and he still hadn't heard what had happened, to Fannin. And so he starts training these troops to be ready to go up against the Mexican army. So this gives them a nice block of time. The problem is some of these soldiers started leaving to go help their families and leaving and figured it wasn't a good cause. All right. Um, Also, during this time, you had dissension in government, which you typically do in new governments, even when the U.S. was formed, even with the war in independence, about who was going to lead the war, what was Washington's strategy. So, anyways, Burnett, who was the Texas president at the time, had ordered Rusk, who was basically the Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, that Houston needed to attack, was trying to tell Houston what to do. So Houston sat down with Rusk and said, "Hey, man, here's my plan. Here's why I'm doing this." Because he hadn't really explained it yet, but he's like, "Here's what you got to understand." And Houston had experience in the Army before. So he's like, here's why we're doing this. Here's how long we're going to do it. Blah, blah, blah. Like the reasons I just said. They need to train. We need weapons. So while they're at the plantation, too, that's another thing. Not only they're training, there was a blacksmith on the plantation who's sitting there, shoeing the horses. Also, this is a time where they could make bullets, okay, which is very key. A lot of these guys didn't have enough ammunition as a soldier, all right? So those are some things that were going on. So Rusk returns back to Burnett and lets him know. He says, hey, Houston's doing what he needs to do. He's actually told him he's boxed in, he's bordered in, and he's waiting for a good opportunity. So they really couldn't force him to move, and they wanted him to, and they went with Houston's decision for that. I mean, because what else could they do, right? So the next part, building an army, and that's what I was just talking about it as well, is this is the time where Houston is making an army. Teaching men how to get into formation, teaching men military commands, which are very important, so they're all on the same page. Making sure that this army knows that we don't need to split this army. Teaching them rank and file, practicing shooting, all these types of things is not just getting men together, but we got to train them the right way. We got to train them to be soldiers, not just, many of these guys, the only thing they ever shot at was maybe a deer or turkeys. I mean, it's a lot different when you're fighting against people that are shooting against you or that you're shooting at a human being in the first place. All right. So Mexican pursuit. Um, Let me give you a date. April 7th, 1836. Santa Anna's army reached the Brazos. You got to remember this is where um, Stephen F. Austin's first settlement was, near the Brazos. So he makes the decision also then. Hang on. Oh yeah, he wanted to go towards where the government was because he thought the government then would be key to capture, and if we knocked down the leaders, executed them, the rebellion would be over. Well, one, that bought Houston more time. Two, this is where Santa Anna starts to split his army into different groups, which was a key thing that Houston wanted to happen and was in the Texans' favor. Once again, remember, Santa Anna is very confident that he's going to end this. Also, he's still very angry that people are questioning not questioning his rule. Well, they're questioning his rule by the fact they declared independence and that they're not respecting who he is. So he doesn't make some of the best decisions. Also, you remember Santa Anna's not the type of guy. If you were a colonel or a general under him, you're not going to bring up points and question things because that's not going to work out for you either. But he's moving his army pretty fast to try to get there. Now, as he's doing that, he's also getting farther and farther and farther away from his supplies. Also, you can only move so fast where your wagons that are pulling the cannons or your horses that are pulling the cannons can't keep up. So that's another key thing is eventually when they did meet, they didn't have all their cannons ready because they were still miles behind. Okay. So that ends, it's about 15 minutes. That ends the first part of the chapter. Like I said, it's only two sections. And anyways, we'll stop that, and then we'll be right back with part two. What is that in Spanish? What is part two in German? Who knows? Ask Mrs. Salas. No. All right. We'll be right back with part two.